Buen dia, buenos dias, good morning everybody. My name is Gordon Prane. I'm an advisor to the leadership of the CGIAR initiative on resilient cities. And I'm going to also be the moderator today. I'm also advising teams from resilient cities in Lima, Dhaka in Bangladesh, and in the Philippines in Metro Manila. So as advertised, this session is about cities, climate change, and food systems, which is a convergence that concerns many sessions. It has concerned many sessions during these 3 days of meetings. We want to hear from the cities who are participating in this session. We want to hear from them about policy developments which are emerging in their cities to address these challenges. But we are also interested in this session to explore the potential for research and innovation organizations to contribute to cities in order to help them to make food systems more resilient, which is a task that is constrained by lack of resources and sometimes lack of expertise. The session is going to be organized in 2 parts. The first part will be 2 presentations. The first one will be by Felipe Dizon, who is an economist with the World Bank. And the second presentation will be by Silvia Alonso, who is the co-leader of the CGIAR Resilient Cities Initiative. These presentations will set the scene through providing research results about the impacts of climate change and urbanization on the food systems of cities and possible research and policy responses. The second part of the session will feature a panel discussion and with representatives from 3 cities. We're waiting for the representative from Nairobi to arrive. Representation from 3 cities covering Latin America, Africa, and Asia about the experiences of addressing policy options in relation to climate change food systems in their cities, and about whether research and innovation organizations can make a contribution. The panelists are Katia Bouillon, who is the Vice Manager of Economic Development for the city of Lima, Peru. Maurizio Cavai is the Deputy Director for Climate Change and Air Quality Monitoring for Nairobi City in Kenya. And Emmanuel Velasco is the co-chair of the Food Security Task Force for Quezon City, Philippines, which is the biggest of 16 cities which make up Metro Manila. So, with no more ado from me, I think I will invite Felipe to give his presentation. Felipe.
Thank you, Gordon. Good morning, everyone. Very happy to be with you all on this 3rd day of the Global Forum. We at the World Bank are only starting to think about how to build more coherence in the investments that we support in the agriculture and food space and in the urban development space. And so this week has been truly inspiring and truly enriching, having sat through the different discussions throughout the past few days, listening to various city leaders, representatives, and practitioners around the challenges, the opportunities, and the solutions that you face around urban food systems and climate justice. Cities are truly at the nexus of food systems and climate change. Sometime between November and December this year, the Sustainable Development Practice Group of the World Bank will be launching a report entitled From Surviving to Thriving, Making Cities Green, Resilient, and Inclusive. Now, the focus of today's discussion is to continue to listen to various city representatives, so to the representatives from Nairobi, from Lima, and Peru. What I would like to do over the next 10 to 12 minutes is to help set the stage a little bit, to talk about, from this report, what we know globally on how green, resilient, and inclusive cities are today, and how that might change in the future. Now, to be clear, there is a lot more that we do not know, and Sylvia's next presentation will help to chart out a knowledge agenda, as Gordon mentioned earlier. A warning for everyone, I am unfortunately an economist by training. So what that would mean is that there's going to be a lot of figures and graphs in these slides. Do not worry, I won't go over the figures in detail, but what I'll do is I'll walk you through and read out the main key takeaways for each of these figures. Now, if you have questions in any of the detail, please do not hesitate to reach out after the session, and I'd be happy to have a chat on sort of the results of the report. So first point is that we find that cities are facing more extreme weather events today. Extreme heat events in cities have become more frequent and more severe. That's what we see in the top figure. In the bottom figure, we see that extreme dry and wet events in cities have also been increasing in frequency over time, over the past 40 to 50 years. What we don't show in these slides, but we also find in the report, is that the frequency of cyclones have also been increasing over time in cities. The second point is that low-income cities are disproportionately exposed to climate risks. Cities in low-income countries are more exposed than other cities of all types to climate-related hazards. And so these are, if you look at the first three bars, that's showing that regardless of size, whether a city is small, medium, or large, lower-income cities are more exposed to climate risks than their wealthier counterpart cities. So how green, resilient, and inclusive are cities today? What I'll do is provide a few metrics, just a few of them, that might shed light on these 3 points. So how green are cities today? Some 70% of global GHG emissions come from cities. Richer cities, sorry, let me turn around because I can't really read that. Richer cities and cities in Asia contribute most to global CO2 emissions that are generated in cities. If you look at the bottom or the right figure and think about vegetation in cities, what we find in this report is that large cities and cities in the upper middle income group have less vegetation. The report also discusses that poor urban design can exacerbate the impacts of extreme heat events in cities. Second thing is, how resilient are cities today? Again, I promise I won't go into the graphs in detail, but I'd like to read out what we find on resilience, and it's that lower income cities are less resilient to increasingly more frequent climate change related shocks and stresses. And there's some analysis globally looking at nighttime lights to see how resilient different types of cities around the world are. And finally, how healthy and inclusive are cities today? Now, if we look at the figure on the left, we look at what people eat globally across 187 countries and compare cities to rural areas. Now, compared to rural consumers, what the report finds is that urban consumers eat less vegetables and whole grains, but they eat more processed meats and sugars, and also that poorer urban consumers are more disadvantaged compared to the richer counterparts in cities. If you look at the right figure, we also find that across various regions around the world, obesity rates are higher in cities than in rural areas across various regions. And these are things we already know. What I'd like to do next is show a couple of ways in how climate and cities interact. On one hand, I'm going to show you one way in which climate shocks can affect access to food in cities. On the other hand, I'm going to show you one way in which climate and the way cities grow will impact or can impact food production in the future. So on that first point, climate shocks and stressors outside of cities can impact access to food in cities. What this figure, pretty complex, shows you is that a drought outside of a city, so outside of a city's boundaries, leads to higher prices in cities for 3 food groups: fruits and vegetables, fish and seafoods, and dairy and eggs. If you're paying attention to the figure a little bit, that's your gray, your blue, and your green. Now, what we don't show in this figure, but we discussed in the report as well, is that better transport networks can make food supply chains more resilient, and that rural roads and road quality can reduce poverty and food price volatility. The second thing is looking at how cities grow and how that might affect food production. Now, you're going to have to bear with me a little bit because I'm going to have to build this over the last few slides. If you read the top part, is our response to climate change will impact the way in which cities grow. Part of what the report finds is that there's this question of how cities will grow. Will they grow horizontally? Will they sprawl? Or will they go upwards? Will they grow vertically? And the report finds that in general, more vertical development results in a more compact, environmentally friendly urban form and also higher incomes. Now, there are different ways we could respond to climate moving forward in the future. One way to model our response to climate in the future is through these 5 shared socioeconomic pathways. Now, I won't go over all the 5 pathways, but what I want to emphasize is that on one end of these pathways is SSP 1, which is sustainability, taking the green road. That's your best case scenario, where there will be low challenges in the future to climate adaptation and to climate mitigation. Now, on slightly the other end of these scenarios is SSP 5, or in red in the bottom, and that's labeled fossil fuel development. Under this largely bad scenario, there will be high challenges to mitigation, climate mitigation, despite low challenges to adaptation. Now, if you look at the figure on the right, all this is saying is that if we are following the largely bad scenario, if we're on SSP 5 over the next 90 years or so, if you look at the red line, that's how cities are going to grow horizontally over time to 2100. And what that's saying is cities are likely to grow mostly horizontally, and urban areas will dramatically expand over the next 80 to 90 years. So why am I showing all of this? It's because we know that how cities grow can impact the crops and the livestock that we produce. Under SSP 5, again, that largely bad scenario, the most significant encroachment of urban land globally will be on, for crops, for fruits, vegetables, and for roots, and on land for poultry and for pigs. And so there's going to be this significant overlap under SSP 5 with where cities are and where the animals are today. And this spells the crucial role that cities play as well in a One Health approach to preventing pandemics in the future. The impacts of city growth will also vary dramatically in different regions of the world. And so what we show here is the largest crop and livestock encroachment of city growth will fall under 3 regions in the world. It will be in Africa, Middle East and North Africa, and in South Asia. And this would be the case in SSP 4, which is where we face high challenges to climate adaptation despite low challenges to climate mitigation. Not only that, we know that the impact of how cities grow and our food production will vary by city. Now, here's one example. This is the map of Nairobi. And in the middle part of the map, that gray area, if you're following that, if you look at the left, is the current built-up area of Nairobi today. The purple squares you see is where the crops currently are around Nairobi. The orange lines is how Nairobi is expected to grow in 2040 if we follow the current trajectory of SSP 3, 4, or 5. And that's just showing that if things don't change, then where cities grow will impact where the crops currently are. Now, if you look at the right figure, this is the same exact thing. This is Nairobi to date, but the green squares represent where the livestock currently are around Nairobi. And so the point here is that there's going to be this overlap in where food is around the city and how cities are expected to grow, depending on how we respond to climate change moving forward. Now, the next 2 figures I'm going to skip over, but it's showing the same example for Lima in Peru and for Quezon City in the Philippines, demonstrating that for different cities, you're going to need a different plan depending on how globally we respond to climate change. All this to say is that there are very important ways in which cities and climate interact together with food systems. It's a very dense slide. I'm not going to go over this. But in the last 15 seconds, all I want to say is it's been truly inspiring to be sitting in the different rooms over the past few days listening to what the solutions could be and kind of the optimism around the room. We're really hoping that we could work together, and I'm really excited to hear what our representatives from Lima, from Quezon City, and Nairobi have to say on how we can work together on policies and investments across 5 I's: information, incentives, insurance, integration, and investments for greener, more resilient, and more inclusive cities. So with that, thank you very much for your attention, and I look forward to the discussions today.
Thank you very much, Felipe, for a really data-packed presentation, which really highlighted one of the major themes of this whole meeting, which is about the justice issues surrounding the impacts of climate change. So I'd like to now invite Silvia Alonso to make her presentation virtually. Silvia.
In my screen. I can see you can see in my camera. I want to make sure you can see my screen.
We see you, Silvia, but can you put up your slide, please?
Yes, I'm actually showing my slides. I can see you cannot see them yet. So I don't know whether this is a glitch or maybe that's coming. I hope.
We see them.
Okay, perfect. Well, good morning, everyone, again. I'm really sorry to not be able to be in the room with you today. Gordon and Felipe and I have been working to prepare this session, and we were all very excited to be part of this forum. But I'm really glad to at least be able to present my contribution remotely. My contribution, as Gordon referred to at the beginning, brings the knowledge and research agenda to the discussions around climate justice and food systems in cities. I speak on behalf of a research initiative that is part of the CGIAR, and I'll just take a few seconds to explain the CGIAR for those of you who might not be aware. The CGIAR is a consortium of research organizations working on research for development, and specifically working on agriculture in low and middle income countries. So really putting science at the service of development. So one of the CGIAR has a new research portfolio, and for the first time, the CGIAR has created an explicit initiative that will look at cities in the global south and food systems to kind of put again science at the service of the development of food systems in cities, and as a response to the great importance of cities and urbanization in the global south. Right. So the new initiative that I'm talking about, we refer to it as Resilient Cities, and it really has a focus on understanding how food systems work in cities and how can governments, stakeholders, and private sector really make informed decisions as how cities and the food system should evolve over the next few years, partly in response to some of the challenges that Felipe was presenting us under the various future scenarios. Felipe referred to the fact that cities in low and middle income countries will probably be facing the biggest challenges when it comes to climate. And there's another interesting and relevant piece of information that I wanted to present on top of that one. Some recent research has shown that the amount of research conducted in relation to the environment, in relation to climate change, is related to the level of preparedness of a country against climate threats, but also to the level of vulnerability. And in particular, the more vulnerable a country is to climate change, the less research on climate change and on environment is being done. And at the same time, the more prepared a country is for climate, the more research is being done. So I think what this goes to show is that research is required specifically in certain areas, and specifically in those countries that are probably going to be affected most strongly by the climate effect. And there will be a lot to talk in terms of research and contribution to solutions to addressing climate challenges and food system challenges in cities. But I just want to highlight a couple of key areas where research can really contribute. I think one of the big ones to come up with that research agenda for cities, food systems, and climate will be on data generation, but more than anything, on how to make best use of data. In putting that at the service of planning, urban planning. A lot of cities across the world are really urbanizing extremely fast. And a lot of decisions are being made without really all the data and all the information at hand. So I think research, and there's a number of initiatives and a number of innovations now that go in that direction, trying to support city governments and also national governments on how to use data and information to make more evidence-based decisions when it comes to urban planning. And that can help planning, and Felipe has shown us some interesting scenarios of potential futures in Nairobi City, for example. So how one can make use of that data to then define what the world will look like, or the cities will look like in the near future, and how should countries and how should cities respond to that. It can also help to identify what are the weak links in the food systems that will benefit from more attention being paid. What are the weak links when it comes to the effects of climate change of food systems, for example? Or what are the elements of the food systems that are having the highest contributions to climate? So with all this information, policymakers can make the best decisions and hopefully contribute to building more sustainable cities going forward. So generating data, but mostly using data. And another clear and relevant contribution of science and research and innovation to the challenges of cities, it has to do with technological and institutional innovations. And obviously there's a great amount of examples that one can put that, but I will only highlight a couple in which the CGIAR has been working for many years, and that will constitute an important part of this new research agenda under the cities initiative. One of them is around circular economy, where waste and outputs from certain systems in cities are used as inputs and resources for other systems. So this contributes clearly to the efficiency of cities, but also to reduce the impact that cities have, for example, on the environment. There's a lot of research on technological solutions and how one can create biocircular economy processes in cities. But something much more innovative and that where more research requires to be done is on institutional innovation. How can those processes be really transformed into business models, business opportunities, so that they can sustain over time as innovations? So the technology is important, the technology is there, and more is being developed. We also now need to work into how can those be truly fruitful and business opportunities. And a second example I wanted to give, and that is very relevant to the nexus between climate and food systems, is on food safety. Food safety is probably one of the biggest concerns of governments worldwide when it comes to food systems. And definitely food safety will probably be one of the aspects that are most impacted by climate over time. Now, there's plenty of challenges in a lot of cities, especially when cities grow very fast and food systems really don't have the time to adapt or suitably adapt to that expanding population and the needs to reach very many places. At the same time, in many of the countries where we work, in the CGIAR work, a lot of the food is still sold in informal markets, markets that really lack often quite solid infrastructure or cold chain. So the challenges around food safety are big. Working on solutions to that, how can research support that? Well, years of research have actually shown that there's not only one solution, obviously, to this problem, but that probably a combination of 3 key elements is important to address this challenge. We call that the 3-legged stool that you can see at the right of my slide, and it is constituted of 3 elements. What is the need for capacity of those working on those markets, on the food systems in cities? Then create solutions that are incentive-based, so because changing of behavior requires incentives for market actors. And the third is creating an enabling environment for their operations. In some examples, we've done some work in Cambodia, putting in practice this kind of institutional innovation where sellers of meat receive training. They receive some basic equipment, but really basic surfaces that can be easily cleaned, disinfectants, aprons that can be washed, and then incentives. And in the case of the example, the image you can see to the right, they have the certificate that are part of this study, that are part of an initiative that tries to improve food safety, and that attracts more customers. If you compare the woman in the image to the right to the one at the back, for many customers actually will be much more appealing to source their meat from the one that we are seeing. We have shown that this kind of intervention, soft, sort of light touch interventions really can really not only improve the attitudes of sellers to safety, but also improve food safety and outcomes. They can reduce the contamination of meat. Similar activities we are doing in Kenya with the dairy sector. We offer training and we offer incentives in many forms, and we are seeing that that can really change and improve food safety. These are just a couple of examples of how science can support city governments on their attempts to deal with the upcoming challenges and the current challenges. I hope this my talk a little bit can inspire the discussions today, and as we brainstorm as to what the challenges are and what solutions could be, we can try and see what could be the space for science and evidence-based to support cities on this process. Thank you very much. Over to you, Gordon.
Thank you very much, Sylvia, for a very interesting presentation, which highlights, among other things, the unequal impacts of climate change and urbanization on food safety. And as you said, food safety is already a major concern for cities and is likely to become an even bigger concern in the future. So both of these presentations have highlighted some key policy challenges and possible responses. And we're going to organize this panel discussion. It's going to be a fairly informal panel discussion with our 3 colleagues from Lima, from Quezon City, and from Nairobi. We're going to organize them around 4 main topics. The first one we're going to discuss information, research-generated information on which policy decisions can be based. The second one, we're going to talk about incentives. Sylvia mentions incentives. They also in Felipe's presentation. Incentives are extremely important, the carrot rather than the stick. to facilitate policy change and action on the ground. So that's the second area. The third area we're going to talk about is around finance and investment, including the issue of insurance. And the fourth area is we're going to talk about institutional integration. I think my colleague from Quezon City, Emmanuel, has made the observation that cities can't solve all the problems on their own. So integration, institutional integration is extremely important, and that's going to be the fourth topic. Finally, we're going to have, I'll invite the panel to make some final observations on where they think key innovations need to take place within their cities to confront climate change and to achieve successful adaptation and mitigation of climate change. So, I should say also that we have about 50 minutes, and we would like to leave about 15 minutes for questions from the floor. Sometimes it's not always been possible in sessions for the audience to participate. We would really like to hear your opinions on these issues. So we'll definitely try to leave 10 to 15 minutes at the end for the audience to ask questions and make comments and observations. So let's turn to the first question. And I'm going to ask responses from all of you about this, and this goes to the heart of what Sylvia commented on, what Felipe commented on. So taking decisions within your cities, you need information for that. And how do you feel about the adequacy of the information that you have access to for making policy decisions within your areas? And how do you feel about the importance of linking with research and innovation organizations to help and support informed decision making? Maybe, Katia, would you like to start?
Buenos días con todos. Un gusto estar acá. Gracias por la invitación.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for the invitation. Well, concerning the research of public policies and governance, I believe that this connection between research and the academia, it brings valuable inputs. We have statistics that show us the trends. We have diagnostics that show us the reality, especially of the more vulnerable populations that we cover in our food systems. And the information that is created from innovation is also necessary so that we can have management models or business models that will enable us to improve all the steps of food security. For example, I see working with the CGIAR in a process in Lima where we're recovering foods. We want guidelines that will determine what our populations that are part of our soup kitchen and how they can recover food in the street markets in Lima. But we need information that will enable us to know better about the infrastructure of the Lima food markets and the policies and their trends of the other local governments. Also of importance is the market managers themselves. They need to provide information to us, such as the volumes that can be recovered and how much of the population we can cover with this amount. We also need to know how food is being handled so that they can really be recovered and be used by the population.
I would like to know.
Concial is is relevant to the issue of bringing together information. So please, could you just say a few words about your working environment?
Sí,
Yes, I am a representative of the Technical Secretariat of the Lima Council of Food, and it's a council that's been recently created less than a year ago, and it's very important because it was created from city law that will allow it to be more stable, even though there are many changes in administration in the city government. And it's very important because it brings together many agents. It's comprised of two parts. The first part is the executive departments, all the secretariats that are part of the city that execute all the different sanctions. And there is also a committee and a consultation committee that is comprised by the international cooperation, academia, and also civil society organizations and representatives from vulnerable groups. So it's disadvantaged groups. So it's very important for all to participate because it helps us to recognize all the efforts that have been made by all the different sectors. And we can sit down and talk about public policies that would reflect the population's needs so that we can meet these needs and add to create strategic actions that are fully integrated. And that's why CONCIAL is so important.
Tell us a little bit about the area of your work, and then tell us how you see the importance of having sufficient information in order to make adequate policy decisions, considering especially that Quezon City is the home of several very prominent universities.
Thank you, Gordon. First of all, bon dial, magandang umaga at mabuhay. Allow me, in behalf of our Mayor, Josefina Joy Belmonte Alimurong, and the City of Quezon City, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the Milan Urban Food Policy organizers and the City of Rio de Janeiro for organizing this very successful 8th Global Forum. Thank you for inviting our city to participate in this forum. We've learned a lot from the collective experience of others, and we are thankful that we have this opportunity to share our own experiences on food security, improvement in urban food systems for a greener and more resilient city. Allow me to give a quick background. Quezon City is the largest city of Metro Manila, the capital of the Philippines, where we have more than 4 million residents and working and transient at any given time. I am the Sustainable Development Projects Officer, the very first city to have such. However, when the pandemic hit, I was given a second hat. I'm the co-chairperson of the Quezon City Food Security Task Force. So, as a quick response to the recovery plan of the COVID-19 pandemic, an interdepartmental and multi-sectoral task force was established in 2020. The task force quickly developed and implemented the Grow QC Kasama Ka sa Pag-unlad Food Security Initiative to address real issues of hunger, loss of jobs, physical and mental health challenges brought about by the pandemic. And these objectives are anchored on SDG 2, SDG 3, and SDG 8. So to answer the question directly on information, our experience, even before the human pandemic, we were hit by the African swine fever animal pandemic. But as soon as the human pandemic came in, one of the first things that the task force established was a hunger map. And we needed to do it quickly. And it became a very useful guide in terms of prioritizing which areas to set up our urban farms as well as our soup kitchens or community kitchens. So with the leadership of our mayor through good governance, the directive is to base our policies and programs on ready and reliable data. The only thing that I'd like to share is that it needs to be timely as well, localized and timely, for it to be useful. Taking too much time gathering the data sometimes gives you lesser time to implement this. I'll leave it at that for now.
Thanks very much, Emmanuel. Morris, can I invite you also to sort of say a little bit about which area of work you're involved in Nairobi City Council, and then to give us an idea of how you face the problem of having sufficient information in order to make adequate policy decisions.
The organizers of this event, on behalf of the Mayor of Nairobi City County, greetings everyone. My name is Maurizio. I'm the Deputy Director in charge of Climate Change and Air Quality Monitoring in Nairobi City. My work is to ensure mainstreaming of climate change agenda in the city is accelerated, and my focus is to ensure that all the strategies which can help in bringing the emissions down and increase adaptation measures with regard to climate change are adhered to. Just to respond to the question, with regard to data, we are all aware that data is an element of production and also sustainable livelihoods. Nairobi City County, we have already initiated the process of ensuring that climate change integration, mainstream of climate change in all the sectors has already started. And this one can be supported by the fact that this year we actually launched the Climate Action Plan, which encompasses all the processes, all the policies, and the action plan which can really support the city with regard to climate change issues. There is need for us as a city to be able to initiate acceleration of the implementation of the food strategies which are in place within the city. And this one requires us to come up with a framework for implementation. For the framework of implementation to be accelerated, there is need for us to be able to identify the gaps which are in existence, and this gap can only be identified through research. So research will actually guide us in getting the gaps and the quick wins which can be able to actually start these programs immediately. So we are ready to start implementing the food strategies, but there is need for us to be able to get mileage with regard to how we get reliable data. Thank you.
Thank you, Morris. Do you have any particular research partners at the current time in the area of climate change research in Nairobi? Are you working with local universities or?
Thank you. In Nairobi City County, we are working with the World Bank, first of all. The city does not have a legal framework for climate change. We have an action plan, but for us to be able to get the buy-in of the leadership of both the city and also the national government, there is need for the city to have a legal framework. So World Bank is going to support us together with the University of Nairobi. They have not gotten the formal agreement to do so, but the funding from World Bank is already there. Then we also getting some support from C40 cities, and I can acknowledge that we have a city advisor destined in my office who is actually supporting the city in the same.
Gordon, may I add something?
Yes, sure.
I didn't answer your question earlier. After we establish a quick hunger map designed or developed locally within the Quezon City government, this was actually validated by a UN FAO study on food insecurity in informal sectors. And the amazing part is that when you analyze or compare the two data, it showed that the top barangays, which is our smallest administrative unit, the top were similar, and even the districts. And as you mentioned, true to SDG 17 and partnerships, we're very much open to partner with the universities, and Quezon City houses the top universities in Metro Manila, and we're currently having talks with them right now in order to help in that aspect of data gathering and evidence-based information.
Very good, thanks. Well, let's move then to the second question. As I said earlier, the issue of incentives is really important. And I would like to hear from you about what kinds of incentives that your cities are trying to introduce to make food systems more resilient, healthy, and just. And I'm thinking, for example, incentives to conserve land, agricultural land. We saw from Felipe's presentation that in all three cities, actually, there is this horizontal sprawl of the city, and that's eating up valuable land for agriculture. What kinds of incentives could be introduced to, or are you introducing, to try and limit that loss of agricultural land for the city? So maybe I'll go to Quezon City. Manuel, would you like to make a comment?
Well, I think similar to most growing cities, we have a large population considered under the informal sector. Okay, the favelas equivalent here in Rio de Janeiro. And the program of our current mayor is to establish in-house settlements which are vertical. Okay, and yet because we are a city in that nature, we're not really into agricultural production. We're more a consumer. Introduction of modern urban agriculture technologies such as vertical gardening, rooftop gardening, and such, which are viable hydroponics, is being introduced. However, we also have areas which are flood prone, okay, which are not ideal for for house building. However, during the non-monsoon types, could be productive areas. So in that sense, we're trying to create our own green belt, okay, to be able to produce at least vegetables, okay, that can be sourced within the city. However, we still have to balance timing and the technology because these are areas which are really flood prone.
Okay, thanks. So the incentive is the support that the city is giving to producers to be more efficient in the way they're producing food.
Well, right now we're giving away starter kits so that we can do container gardening at homes and in communities, as well as capacity building.
Okay. Katia, in Lima also has three valleys, which are the agricultural sort of heart of the city, the three valleys where irrigation allows, it's a desert city, irrigation allows the production of food. Land is disappearing, agricultural land is disappearing in those valleys. What kinds of incentives is the city of Lima trying to introduce to limit that spread? And also other kinds of incentives you might want to mention.
Well, in Lima, we have, as you mentioned, three valleys. The agricultural production is there, happens there, but these three valleys only cover 1 to 2% of the demand. So it's interesting for us to preserve this area because there is a high urban pressure, and it's not only a decision by the city government, but also by the governments of each location. So we are trying to have farmers maintain their activities, the ones who keep farming the land with this guideline towards farming. So we're talking to them so that they can increase their competitiveness, their production, and so that they can be part of farmers markets, trying to getting a decree that allows public spaces to offer this healthier production that people can recognize as such. We also have many farmers traditional farmers, traditional agricultural farmers, and we are trying to have them adhere to good practices, to best practices, and avoid the use of harmful chemicals. These are the ways in which we are trying to encourage them, but we have limited resources, as you know, and we are trying to establish partnerships for projects, and we have many different alternatives. We have some NGOs who work in these environmental areas, and they also reach areas where we can't go and to help the population. So the idea is for us to have other alliances so that the farmers can maintain their activities. We are looking for partnership with embassies so that we can maintain the irrigation systems, because we have problems with water as well. In addition to that, we promote urban agriculture in more disadvantaged areas in Lima. And this incentive works as by visiting communities. We talk about the subject, and those who want to participate, who want to engage, we offer them elements so that they can work on urban agriculture. And oftentimes the soil is prepared with compost, and we follow these actions so that people can learn how this vegetable garden work happens. And we also have a program of urban promotion of agriculture so that community leaders can get training in urban agriculture.
Spanish, but I'd just like to follow that up with asking, is there any plan to zone parts of the valleys in order to make it sort of legally usable only for agriculture, and so that, you know, house building or industry, you know, would not be able to go? Is there any plan for doing something like that?
Sí, actualmente se está desarrollando el plan de
Right now, we are developing this urban development plan with agricultural areas. However, we are not able to maintain all of them because the city is a large city and we have many inhabitants in Lima, and we have less and less space. So the plan considers these aspects, but it doesn't work 100%. And it can't maintain all the actions that it should. And even with the plans, farmers sometimes still migrate to other areas because it doesn't work for them financially speaking. So that's why we are trying to increase competitiveness, and we're also trying that they remain in the area.
Anything on any experience in relation to incentives that are being implemented in Nairobi?
Yeah, thank you. We all realize that Nairobi's city is actually growing rapidly, meaning that agricultural land is diminishing at a very fast rate. But this one does not mean that Nairobians do not do a lot of farming. We realize that in our previous conversations, meetings, we have had a lot of uptake of urban agriculture within the city, and actually a bigger number of people actually practicing the same. So what the county government is doing is creating and enabling infrastructure with regard to making that these farmers do not go a lot of post-harvest losses. This is an initiative which has led to creation of more markets so that these farmers can be able to sell their products within the shortest time possible after production. Then within these markets, the government of Nairobi plans to have what we call cold rooms. Meaning that if a farmer brings their commodities, they can be able to even take more time before they really expire or even go into waste. Then the other thing which the city is also doing is trying to map up stakeholders who are also in the food chain businesses. For example, you realize that the stakeholders or partners who are undertaking black soldier fly farming. So instead of these farmers thinking that all their food products have gotten into losses, they can even be able to sell the expired, the waste to these farmers so that they can generate a black soldier fly. Thank you.
Very interesting, thanks. I'm going to stay with you, Maurice, for the next questions. This is relating to finance and investment. It's extremely important that, startups in the area of green businesses, or even in relation to waste management, that the city can help those startups financially. Do you have any, do you have ways of doing that? Do you have plans to support with financial investments these kinds of green businesses? And a second, that's part of the first part of the question. The second is to do with finance for the city. So one thing is the city financing green businesses and different activities in relation to mitigating climate change or facilitating adaptation to climate change. The other is the city accessing finance itself from outside. So if you could just give us some sense of what's going on in Nairobi in relation to those two aspects of financing.
Thank you very much. Accelerating of climate finance within the city is one of the greatest concern, especially by the leadership of the city. And I want to say this because even our president declared that he's going to construct more markets for the city, about 20 of them, in addition to the ones which we have. So what we are talking about is ensuring that these markets are green, first of all. They are smart markets, which can be able to have the supportive infrastructure for the city farmers, as well as the farmers who come out of the city, to be able to have a place where they can trade their wares, their food, and also encourage them to be able to make their way to Nairobi and trade within Nairobi. What the county government is doing, or rather what the city is doing right now, is trying to create an enabling framework for green financing to take place within Nairobi. We have not started that process. We are not started, but yet we are still planning to initiate that process. We are looking forward to getting more capacity with regard to what kind of projects we can be able to undertake in terms of climate finance. And this is an area where if we were shouting, we shout the loudest, so that now we can open doors for partners to come on board and give us the support which is required for the city to develop the infrastructure for urban markets and all that.
Thank you. So you also mentioned earlier that you are working with the World Bank. Are you able to access finance from the World Bank, or is that going only to the national government?
Thank you very much. The program for World Bank is divided into two. The first element is to support the city's governance structure to be able to undertake climate action. And the other one will come as a result of once the city governance infrastructure is in place, then the World Bank will be able to support the city with regard to climate investment programs. So before that one comes on board, this is an area where we need the city leadership to be capacity built, so that we can be able to even develop bankable projects. We know that this funding has not come, it's not an easy program to access, but once we are able to have the capacity to develop these programs, then it is going to be an easy ride on us. So we are calling upon partners to be able to fill the gap of ensuring that the city leadership is able to develop bankable projects. which are in line with the adaptation projects. Thank you.
Thanks. Any, Emmanuel, do you have any comments on the issue of financing?
Well, what's the reality? The reality is our country is undergoing a recession. So the challenge of investments is that the businesses are not yet back to normal. However, through good governance, the Quezon City has actually generated more revenue than ever before because we transitioned from a manual to an online mechanism. So we have to start within. We cannot provide investments when we are inefficient in our tax collection and so on. And yet, in the context of sustainability, we realize that Quezon City alone cannot do this. And that's why accessing through partnerships again of global financial instruments is very important. However, we need to show that we are trustworthy, we are able to do it, and we need to have a plan. So we have a climate action plan, and we're currently developing our food security plan. And again, in the side conversations we've had, most of these funds are coursed through national government and does not necessarily reach the specific cities. I think there's an openness now. We had discussions with other members here, such that through membership, like the Milan Food Pack, it gives again credibility, and hoping that these global funds can be directed specific to cities that are committed to address sustainable issues, particularly climate change. And by the way, just earlier this month, just a few weeks prior to this, Quezon City just established its first investor summit, in which we are inviting investors. We're doing stakeholder discussions on what kind of incentives they need, the policies that they need to attract investment into the city that are aligned to the city's vision and mission. Thank you.
Katia, the other issue we haven't discussed in relation to finance is the question of insurance. And Emmanuel mentions that all countries and cities are facing financial constraints under the present climate. Do you see it feasible, say, for Lima to be able to have an insurance system for people who are severely affected by climate change? In the case of there is flooding events happening in Lima from the rivers coming, the rivers there. Do you have any comments on that issue of insurance?
Sí, bueno, como lo mencionó Emmanuel, las ciudades de por sí tienen una limitante en cuanto a...
As Manuel said, many cities do suffer with restricted resources and funds. And of course, for the local government, it's very hard to generate this kind of incentives for the population. We also depend on the budget guided by the Ministry of the Economy of the national government. So we need a proposal to be approved. We need to form a proposal that can be approved by the national government so that they can then fund the local governments. On our own, it is not possible. Maybe only in emergencies, like during the pandemic, there was a strategy and donations happened, but with a very well-organized plan and under the guidance of the Ministry of the Economy. So it will depend on the resources they have available and that are not opposing our responsibilities in the local government with regards to local regulation issues.
The fourth area, which is a very important area to do with institutional integration. And this has two dimensions. It has a horizontal dimension which involves cross-sectoral integration. Most cities are divided up into different sectors, different agencies, and often there's a lot of protective, sort of self-protection, and divisions between agents, between those different sectors or agencies within the city. How can those divisions be overcome? How can there be cross-sectoral cooperation? And beyond, cities depend on the surrounding area, and often those surrounding areas are under different administrative jurisdictions. So that's one aspect. I'm asking, how are you helping to overcome those divisions and build integration in that horizontal way? The other dimension is to do with a vertical integration between cities and the provincial and national governments. So that's quite a lot to take in, but I'm asking you to, I know that Lima has good experience in this area, and I'd like you to share that with us now.
Sí, bueno,
Well, based on CONCIAL, the council I mentioned in the beginning, we have become much closer to the national government, with academia, with the global institutions, and also with the stakeholders who are interested and participate in CONCIAL, and therefore CONCIAL is very useful. We organize monthly meetings where we can discuss important topics. We already have an agenda with the topics that we must discuss, such as the food system, and we are approaching the topics little by little and submitting proposals. We are also expecting the approval of a bill, a law that will promote urban agriculture. So having these discussion topics and platforms with many stakeholders has been working well. And also knowing what the federal government is doing with regards to international cooperation, what the academia is doing, and also businesses, has enabled us to take forward many projects. 2 projects are ongoing in the valley with agroecological systems, which helps us to prioritize what is being done. Other things are modernizing markets and other consumption aspects. And this has been bringing us information that is closer to us, and therefore all these stakeholders are drawing closer together, and we can discuss how we can contribute with what is being done, or some actions that can supplement the different programs developed by the city government.
Quick comments on integration. First from Morris from Nairobi, and then from Emmanuel.
Yeah, thank you. Nairobi City County has already established a vertical integration protocols. We are all areas of government, ministries, and other stakeholders are involved when it comes to climate change implementation programs, plus other programs the city wants to undertake. So there is no, when it comes to information flow, we do not have any gaps. Information is able to flow bottom up and also from up to bottom. And this is a model which even the president of the day is actually implementing. Thank you.
Very good, thanks.
Well, I think my response would be is that this global pandemic, though it's difficult for all, has actually brought all of us together. I think that's the lesson to be learned. So even within the Quezon City government, by establishing the Food Security Task Force, which is an interdepartmental and multi-stakeholder group, it pushed us to start talking, to break down the barriers. But at the same time, going vertically to the national government and even beyond, that's why we're here in this global forum, is that we are all common with sustainable development goals. And I think that's where the clarity, where food is common to all, health is common to all, addressing hunger, livelihood challenges, and health and wellness really opened the doors for this integration that we all badly need if we are going to meet sustainability or the SDGs in 2030.
Thank you, Emmanuel. I think that you've made a very important point, and you know, the pandemic had so many negative effects that we don't really have time to go into it, but there definitely, in our conversations that we've had, there are some positives that have come out, and I think integration is probably one of them, for sure. So, before we open it up to the audience, a last question on what kind of innovations do you think are missing in your cities, and what kind of innovation would you like to see happening, and you know, how would you go about achieving this kind of really key, important type of innovation that you think is missing? So I'm asking for a pretty quick response to that question, so we give some time for questions. Maurice, would you like to start?
Yeah, thank you. I think for the city, what we really require now is to do what we call digitization. Digitization makes sure that the flow of data is seamless. We can be able to have data flowing from one corner of the city to the lowest person. We can have all farmers connected. We can have farmers even getting to know the prices of their products in a day by a press of a button. So what it really requires for us to be able to activate digitization process within the city and create an enabling framework for the city to be able to even showcase what they have not done to the rest of the world. Thank you.
Excellent, thanks.
I agree with Maurice that digitalization, or the use of the digital sphere, is important. However, behind the digital sphere is really the human person. And that's why capacity building organization of these people who will use this digital technology is as important.
Finally, Katia.
Sí, bueno, considero también que el contar con información.
I also believe that having information available in real time is of extreme importance. In our case, I would love to have in Lima a registry of urban farming, how many producers, how many farmers, what is the volume of production, so that we can cover our population. We still lack this information at hand so that we can understand the needs we need to address. It is also important to organize markets, and in this sense, to include the recovery and retrieval of foodstuffs, not only in terms of agriculture, but also management, and also to implement a more circular economy.
From there, so we have one question over there. Do we have any microphones? Yes.
Maybe use them.
Hola, muchas gracias. Bueno,
Hello, thank you very much. I am Di Merida from Mexico. Thank you for your reflections. They are invaluable to us. My question is, we also have this dynamics of a urban growth that shifts the productive areas away from the city. And therefore, there is a new component that is also in the same situation. It does not have to do exactly with losing land, but what part of the population is losing interest in working with agriculture. They want to take on jobs that are more typical of the city: offices, shops, services. So in this sense, what challenges have you faced to try to make this population remain in the land? In Mérida, for example, we don't hear about rural population. We hear about local producers. I know there is a change in the vision, but did you see this challenge, and were you able to face it somehow?
In Lima, we also have we face the same situation. We have a population that no longer wants to go back to rural areas. They want their children to study other things that will allow them to have more opportunities. This is also happening to people who do traditional farming, which is harder. But thanks to the work that we've been doing for the past 3 years, we have been taking steps to raise awareness in youth about agroecological farming. And these are people who want to stay in rural areas. We are working with them. We've been working with them for 3 years, and we've seen changes when it comes to relationships, market relationships. And I see that there is a very strong work of awareness raising, and that so that they can see that this activity is very important. That remaining in the rural areas is not bad. It can bear fruit if it comes with profitability for them. We are starting to work with youth that are aware of this opportunity that agroecological farming allows.
Very, very quickly, a little anecdote from Lima also, that we ran a survey in Lima of young people about what they wanted to be when they finished college. There was a list of activities, and sort of one list was agriculture, which sort of 1% of the respondents wanted to do. And also on the list was agro-industry. And I can't remember exactly, but maybe 70% of the people were interested in getting into agro-industry. So that means that, it's a way of framing what agriculture is that can get young people's attention. Please, Emmanuel.
Thank you for the question. I think the challenge in the Philippines is the same, that we have an aging farming population. However, again, if we want to be hopeful and look at the positive, the importance of food has never been emphasized. And we cannot have food when we don't have farmers. The secret is the farmer. Even if we have technology, but behind it, there's nobody planting our food, then what will we eat? And this is where the amazing part, where you see younger generations now getting their hands dirty, because that concept of manual labor is something which is aspired for. However, that's where data and numbers need to come in. We need to document what are the technologies, modern Internet of Things, where in which we can honestly say that it can give enough income. Might not be the highest of all, but enough to have decent families and lives. And we're hopeful with that. What's happening in the Philippines now in Quezon City is that our major university in Quezon City is adopting the first urban agriculture learning and innovation center, where will be housed the most advanced technologies in order to encourage the youth. And last but not the least, we need to let the farmers be involved in the value chain. They cannot just be simply in the production part of it. And that's where development of associations, cooperatives, so that they're part of the value add, nearer, closer. And especially with technology now, you can meet your customer. Of course, it changes dynamics because you will be cutting out middlemen who are also earning and learning. But again, these are the new developments, the new normal that this pandemic has brought to us. Thank you.
There was another question here.
Thank you. It was very, very interesting, all of your efforts. I think that one topic in which we can invest is data visualization. So if...
Sorry,
data visualization.
Yeah.
So about the information and so on, because if we are able to do like dashboard with a map of our cities that see exactly as Felipe presented in the introductory, where are the different areas of urban production, what are the pressure behind them, we can explain to all of our different colleagues for urbanism department, from budget department and so on, our interest on that specific area, and then work with the different directors outside municipality to present this area as focusing of our attention. So maybe they can become agricultural park, also with citizens for agritourism and so on, very closer to the cities. And if you are able to open this part not just for agricultural production, but to engage other actors in this, they become more stronger, but we need to visualize them, take name, history, anecdotes, and so on, because it's very powerful to strengthen the relation closer to them.
Very good. Yeah. Any comments on that? Yeah.
We have to be realistic also when we talk about data gathering or information. I think the role of the farmers are very important. In particular in the Philippines, our farmers have low education levels. They don't have access to internet as easy, and they don't understand how to utilize apps and all. But what is interesting now is that this is where we're engaging their children, the younger generations who are more digitally familiar. And because food is part of the family, that's the contribution that the youth can do. It's not necessarily doing the farming, but providing that data. But we need to educate them and make them stakeholders. It's not a requirement of government simply to collect the data, but for the farmers themselves to understand why we need to get that data together and collect it together. Okay, I think that's very important. And that's where we need capacity building and investments, just to focus on that. Thank you.
Morris, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I agree with my colleague that we need to generate data which is very much reliable. And as I stated earlier, we need this data which can be able to even inform people that, especially in urban cities, that you don't have to have space so that you can start farming. The new modern of farming, for example, instead of having these multi-story flats with people living as apartments, we can have one multi-story flat being converted into a farm. Then we can be able to even say that these are the kind of the things we want people to really appreciate. Thank you.
Good. Are there any other questions? Okay. So I think I will invite you to give a warm round of applause for our panelists. And also for the two presenters. Thank you very much for your attendance. Bye.
Hello, everyone. We thank you for your patience. It'll take a couple more minutes. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for your patience. Remember what I said the first day about punctuality? That was on us, so we apologize. So you did it. 3 intense days of sharing best practices, of networking, of accountability, and creating and delivering a fair world. A world in which we can rest at night knowing that the access to foods, healthy foods, is a guaranteed basic human right. I hope we can leave here knowing that we can continue to do our good work and continue to be engaged in fostering sustainable socioeconomic and cultural growth in our communities. I thank you for your commitment. Also, thank you for letting me crash your event as the Master of Ceremony. I've learned a lot from you in the past 3 days. We'll start our closing ceremony with a video from the Assistant Director of FAO, Mr. Maurizio Martina.
Thank you, Teresa, for giving me the floor. Distinguished guests, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. It's a great pleasure to participate in the Milan Urban Food Policy Pact Global Forum. Cities already consume 70% of global food supply, 80% of global energy, and generate 70% of global waste, while contributing of 70% of global greenhouse gas emissions. Many urban and peri-urban communities are exposed to food and nutrition insecurity. Overweight and obesity and hidden hunger are on the rise, especially in urban settings. Food consumption and other behavior choices made by urban and peri-urban consumers shape the sustainability of food systems. Rising global temperatures increase the number of extreme weather events such as floods, droughts, storms, and increases the spread of tropical disease. Climate change effects do not affect all equally. Residents in poor neighborhoods and slums get most seriously affected by extreme weather events. Protecting their access to food during extreme climate events is a matter of a comprehensive urban planning which will prevent. Integrated urban and territorial planning processes is also critical to manage complex trade-offs in land, water, energy use, and supply of basic services. Such systems are rarely present in the context of urban centers in low-income countries. There is an increasing need for innovative urban and local food systems governance and policy coordination solutions. Many cities worldwide are already doing a lot in these regards. However, quite often cities, particularly small and medium, do not get the proper recognition and support at global and national level to increase their resilience. This has to change, and several partners can work together towards that change, and local and subnational governments should be recognized as key players in the overall food systems transformation and climate change agenda. Ladies and gentlemen, policy coherence is fundamental to create an enabling environment for accelerating food systems transformation. Platforms such as the Urban Food System Coalition, one of the coalitions recognized during the United Nations Food System Summit, can be a crucial opportunity to join forces. I'm pleased to share that the FIO strategic framework includes urban food systems as one of the 20 priority program areas. The urban food agenda and Green Cities Initiative are key corporate flagship initiatives. FAO works with partners to support the cities by promoting urban and peri-urban forestry and agriculture, as well as the transformation of urban food systems. FAO is supporting local governments to achieve climate justice through engaged rural-urban synergies, improved social inclusion and equity, and resilient food systems. We are supporting a number of cities in integrating food systems and green space in local policies. Dear friends, FAO reiterates the commitment to continue working together with the Milan Urban Food Policy Pact and its member cities. For our member countries, urban food systems have acquired a high priority and a key entry point for sustainable food system transformation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Maurizio. Now I want to invite up on stage representatives of the Milan Pact Secretariat, Anastasia Sergeyeva, Cécile Michel, and Serena Doraccio, to officially welcome the new signatory cities of the Milan Pact. Just a quick note to those who are signing, please come up on stage to your right, my left, and stay behind me after you have signed.
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning, everyone. On behalf of the Milan Urban Food Policy Secretariat, I'm delighted to be at the closing ceremony of the 8th Milan Urban Food Policy Pact Global Forum. We had 3 days full of inspiring and enriching moments that allowed us to share our knowledge and learn from each other. It is very important for us to dedicate a moment for a signing ceremony for the cities that joined the Milan Pact this year. This is important for us for 2 reasons. In this way, we all have the possibility to give a proper welcome to the new cities and make them feel part of our community. In fact, our goal is not to achieve a higher and higher number of signatory cities in the Pact, but rather to have cities that actively and continuously contribute to our network. On the other hand, all the cities that are already members of our community can get to know the new cities and, most importantly, the people behind them to establish new connections and partnerships for future collaboration. This year, we reached an important number of cities, thanks also to the work of the steering committee, whom we thank once again. All these new cities can, of course, count on the steering committee and on the Milan Secretariat for a full onboarding in our community. The numbers that we presented during the State of the Pact have already changed, because during these 3 days, we had some new signatory cities that joined the Milan Pact, reaching a total number of more than 250 cities. A big round of applause for our new members. Now, I would like to give the floor to my colleague, Cécile, who will announce the new cities.
Good morning, everyone. So now I will announce the whole list of our new cities, the one that signed between our 7th Global Forum last year in Barcelona till today. I will later call on them on stage, the one that are present to join on stage for the signing ceremony. So our new cities are Salvador de Bahia, Abu Dhabi, Bafoussam, Balikpapan, Banjabaru, Bhopal, Bontang, Chandigarh, Chiang Mai, Chone, Cincinnati, Dijon, Dublin, FLR, Esteban Echeverria, Itequini, Durban, Freetown, Godoy Cruz, Gorontalo, Guelph, Indore, Istanbul, Jabalpur, Jammu, Kolding, Le Havre Seine Métropole, Lisbon, Makassar, Manizales, Maricá, Montreuil, Namur, Nilufer, Ostend, Osasco, Pachuca, Panaji, Pekanbaru, Porto Viejo, Quezon City, Rajkot, Rourkela, Sagar, San Carlos, Santa Fe, Santiago de Cali, Seberang Perai, Samarang, Sukabumi, Surat, Tarakan, Tumkur, Ujjain, and Wroclaw. I now invite new city representatives that are present today to join us on stage for the signing ceremony. Then please come to the lectern and announce the city you represent. Welcome.
Buenos días a todos y a todas. Yo represento.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I represent the city of Santiago de Cali in Colombia. We are very happy to be part of the Milan Pact because we want to show what we are doing in our city of Cali with regards to the crucial topics discussed here. We also want to learn with everyone here. And on behalf of our mayor, we greet you. Thank you very much. Hello, good morning. I am Maurizio Garcia, representing the city of Pachuca in Mexico. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I am Marceli Moraes, Secretary for Sustainability and Resilience. I am Marcelo Oliveira, Secretary of Education of the city of Salvador, Bahia.
Messer, and I am representing the city of Guelph, Canada.
Je suis Roger Tafam, maire de...
I am Roger Tafam from the city of Bafoussam in Cameroon.
I'm Manuel Velasco, representing Mayor Josefina Joy Belmonte, Quezon City, Philippines.
Hi, myself Swagatika, representing Raulkela.
I am Vanessa Velasquez, and I represent the city of Ecuador.
A final applause for our new signal.
Thank you, everyone. That was really cool. Very nice picture. And congratulations to our partners in crime from Milan to collecting all these new signatures and to making this event happen. Please join me in welcoming the founder of the groundbreaking movement, slow food movement, Carlo Petrini, and Bruno Oliveira, Chief of the International Relations and Cooperation Office of the Rio de Janeiro City Hall, on behalf of Mayor Paes.
Bene, innanzitutto grazie per l'invito e grazie per che mi fate parlare il mio idioma, che è l'italiano, un po' di italiano.
Speak my language, Italian. On October 23rd, 2015, we celebrated in Milan the birth of this pact. And I had the honor, along with the mayor of Milan, to talk at that time. And in that same year in Paris, the greatest nations in the world got together to face climate change. In Paris, these actions, these nations, made some decisions. And over time, these decisions, however, were not implemented. And the situation during these 8 years, when it comes to climate, as everybody knows, has only gotten worse. In these 8 years, We've had extraordinary events such as the pandemic, many wars in the world. But without a shadow of a doubt, the situation of climate change is bringing about a lot of suffering all over the world. And if we don't understand two very important things, which are, first, a large part of the responsibility for this environmental disaster is in the hands of the global food system. This is the first element. 37% of the CO2 production, or CO2 emissions, comes from this global food system, 37%. This is the first main issue. The second element is that if we do not implement together change or behaviors that would change the status of change the status of things, the situation will get worse, and we'll all be responsible for two main injustices. The first one is a generational injustice, the one that we brought about to our children and the children of our children when we hand an environment to them that is worse than the environment that we received. So it's a generational injustice. Our children will not forgive us for what we're doing against them. The second injustice is that a group of countries produced 80% of CO2 emissions, and this group is causing suffering in other countries that are not responsible for these CO2 emissions. This is another unfair situation. So as I've seen these days, the dialogue and all the meetings that happened here in the past 3 days, for me, this brought me hope. So I need to thank you. I need to thank the municipality of Milan, the city of Milan, which is leading this network. And I must say that the reality that you represent is extremely important for the world for 3 reasons. First, you represent the capacity of intervening locally based on local realities. The large governments, the large institutional realities are not able to go that deep, to go as deep as the city governments can, as deep as mayors can go. And second, this network is very meaningful because all of us can learn about the diversity that we represent. Each one of us present here brings complexity, diversity, a diversity of behaviors, attitudes, and social economic realities that is very important for everybody to know. And the third element is that, as I could see in these past days, you are sharing experiences. Sharing your experience can encourage other people. A meeting such as the one that was held here in Rio, such as this one, this is something very important because what you heard, what you were able to hear, because you were able to be part of this meeting, and also all the ideas that you're probably going to implement when you go back to your cities. I believe that after the large gathering at Expo Milan 2015, this pact, this network, is the most precious heritage from Expo. And examples such as this network are not easy to find. There's nothing like it in the world. And the intervention that we can make in the international community, such as the United Nations. The United Nations do not have the capillarity necessary to intervene as deep as you can intervene. I hope that this pact will move forward. And please, do not abandon the city of Milan. Don't let Milan alone, having to organize everything on its own. Each one of you needs to take responsibility for keep this reality standing, because this is a political reality. This is a determinant factor right now. So as I salute all of you, I would like to thank each one of you for what you've done and what you're doing and what you will do. And I would like to ask you to think about two important things. We need to think that we need to keep in our hearts two things. The good practices that we are all experiencing today, they're good for taking care of the sick, but we need to take care of the disease. We need to get rid of the disease. We need to annihilate the disease. And the disease is determined by a social-economic system that pressures us to consume more and more. Not paying enough attention to nature, to the environment, not paying attention to the disaster that is unraveling in the world. For this reason, mayors are the best people in the cities to talk to the people and say that their food behavior needs to change, because otherwise, if we don't change the food behaviors of millions of people, all the work that we've done will be like treating the sick person without curing the disease. We need to make citizens become responsible, because the way citizens decide to eat will determine the environmental, social, and economic situation. And I believe that this is one of the main challenges that the cities in the Milan Pact face. You need to interact with citizens so that they can change their behavior. I am Italian. And in my country, when I was a child, 50 years ago, maybe a little bit more, when I was young, Italians consumed 40 kilograms of meat per year. Each Italian consumed 40 kilograms of meat a year. Nowadays, Italians consume 95 kilograms of meat per capita a year. And this is not good. It's not good for your health. And it's not good for the situation that is being created, that is with the livestock that contributes to CO2 emissions. So we need to work. I'm not saying that we should go back to 40 kilograms, but we need to respect many places in the world where people cannot eat even 5 or 10 kilograms of meat a year per capita, and we can't tolerate this injustice. We cannot tolerate this level of adversity. Personally, as an Italian person, I am committed to change. I am committed to decreasing waste in my household, reducing the consumption of meat in my household, reducing the consumption of ultra-processed foods, reduce the use of disposable plastics, which in the food system is the main cause of disaster, the first and main cause of disaster. These are attitudes that need to be changed, that need to change, and all of them pertain to citizens. So citizens, do you think that they'll listen to the politicians or their mayors? Citizens, will they pay more attention to the people in their cities or to people all around the world? I am sure that this is the meaning. This is the meaning of being a local manager. Being a local manager means to share experience and making it stick with the population. Therefore, even when it comes the time for you to vote, people will remember who said meaningful things and who didn't say anything meaningful. They will remember what the people who practiced what they preached and those who didn't. So we need to be aware that the situation is dramatic. It's critical. We must set this power into motion. We need to set into motion this extraordinary network, and this will only be possible if all of us, if we get together, if we join efforts, if we understand the difficulties and the hindrances. And there's nothing better than a meeting like this to understand diversity. In this sense, we also need to pay attention to many slogans. It's easy and fair to say that we could go back to urban agriculture or agriculture within large cities. It is fair to say that. But if I propose this to the mayor of a large African city where there is no water, what type of agriculture will they be able to do in these conditions? First, we need to have water, and then we can implement agriculture. And with this idea, I would like to conclude. If all of this will be possible if we implement through the citizens of our cities environmental transformation process. Without this transformation, all our efforts will not be enough. This environmental transformation is what we need. Everywhere, at schools, we need to work towards this environmental transformation. And I would like to say this looking you in the eye, which is the most difficult thing. The most difficult thing is solidarity, cooperation. And I'd rather call it fraternity, universal fraternity. When we have one of the cities that are present here, only one suffering from problems, this is when we're going to see the fraternity in the group. Oftentimes, a large city can help a small city. And this logic needs to advance. regardless of the state of the city that is suffering, the culture of the region. And in this case, we're going to set the role model, because without universal fraternity, we'll not be able to solve this situation. And I say this with all my heart. We only have one planet, and we all live in the same planet. So it's fair that everybody should understand that if there is a disaster, the planet will keep going, will continue to exist. Humankind, we, Homo sapiens, we are going to be extinct. So if we are sapiens, it's about time to share our ideas and fight against and fight for a change in behavior, the behavior of our populations, and the change in all the political system in the world.
Senhoras e senhores, vice-prefeitos.
Ladies and gentlemen, vice mayors, mayors, representatives of international organizations, and all organizations here, and also those who are watching us remotely. Ladies and gentlemen, representatives of the Milan Pact, my most excited greetings. The local secretary for social assistance, Maria Dominguez, on behalf of whom I greet all of the local government of Rio. Good morning. It is a great pleasure for me to be today here, and it is also a great honor to represent Mayor Eduardo Paes, who unfortunately could not be with us. I begin these closing comments by thanking all the delegations that are here representing cities, local government, civil society organizations, members of the Academy, and all those who gifted us with your presence and participation in the 8th Global Forum of the Milan Pact. I also thank the brilliant participation of Professor Carlo Petrini, whose speech has inspired all of us in this closing ceremony. I congratulate the Secretariat of the Pact and our partner Fiocruz for the big success of this event, organized with the help of Fiotech and the city government's international relations team. A very special thanks to all of the participants of the international relations of the Rio government team, who worked restlessly for one of the first physical events in the city of Rio after the pandemic. Thank you to the whole team. It was an enormous honor for the city of Rio to host the 8th Global Forum of the Milan Pact, the first forum including the Americas and the Global South. It was a great moment for our city to be able to count with the presence of all experts who proposed to share their knowledge with us. Along the event, we had a chance to discuss climate justice, waste of food waste, school nutrition, government, as well as the post-pandemic world, besides other topics presented by our partners in the Pact, the cities represented here, and the city of Rio. Our secretariats of the environment, of economy, of health, and others who represent different areas of the local government were able to present the policies and projects that we are beginning to implement in our city. I am happy to see that Brazilian cities like Araraquara and Curitiba had stood out in this forum and received honor mentions during the award ceremony. Cities like Belo Horizonte, São Paulo, and Porto Alegre also participated actively in the discussions. Unfortunately, today, 33 million Brazilians are hungry, an enormous setback with relation to the progress we saw in the beginning of this century. We are one of the greatest barns in the world, and we cannot ensure the basic right to feed our population. More than ever, Brazilian mayors have a crucial role so that the policies to access food cover all the population in a fair and inclusive manner without leaving no one behind. The Regional South America Forum yesterday strengthened the bonds between the regional members and promoted a discussion on objectives and goals to continue the South American commitments for the pact. And therefore, the city of Rosario in Argentina was chosen to host the Regional Latin American Forum of the Milan Pact in 2023. This shows us that more than ever, solutions to the problems that we are experiencing now must be discussed at the Global South. Cities like Quelimane, Bandung, and Mexico cities have brought relevant initiatives. I want to congratulate New York, Addis Abeba, Rourkela, Rosario, London, and Yosu for having received the awards of the Milan Pact this year. We have a lot to learn from the projects you have developed in the areas of public purchasing, government purchasing of food, school nutrition, agroecologic production, innovative urban agricultural installations, and the reduction of food waste. Your projects show different forms of bringing up efficient public policies to deal with food issues. In 2019, the city government of Rio received an honor mention for the Carioca, Hortas Cariocas Rio Gardens program, for which we are very proud. Rio is now hosting the greatest garden in Latin America in the community of Manguinhos this year, and the mayor has mentioned that in his opening speech, that it will become the largest garden in the world by 2024. We will work restlessly in the celebrations of the 10 years of the Milan Pact in 2025, we can have this commitment come true here in the city of Rio. I can assure you that these prizes do not celebrate only great ideas. They incentivize and encourage cities to seek new solutions and to implement more and more ambitious initiatives. And this is what we've been doing in Rio. Besides exchanging experiences, discussing and presenting best practices, the big triumph of the Milan Pact is to incentivize the adaptation of city public policies in themes associated to food transformation. Today, we know that more than half of the global population lives in cities, and our challenge is to feed 7 billion people who will come to the cities by 2050. These figures and other many numbers mentioned during the forum with regards to the growth of hunger and food inequality leave us with no doubt that the current situation is alarming. Local governments are at the front line in fighting climate change and its many impacts in the more vulnerable urban populations. The scenario is challenging, and local governance is strategic to ensure healthy food and end hunger, poor poverty, and poor nutrition. When I look around this room, I don't see only mayors, vice mayors, and technical officials of the cities. I see a room filled with stakeholders who are committed not only to promoting the objectives of the Milan Pact. I see colleagues who have the power, the tools, and the political will to go beyond the objectives that are agreed here concerning a fair future that is also inclusive and sustainable for our populations. Finally, I want to congratulate all the 49 cities that joined the pact during the forum. Rio de Janeiro is proud to be a part of this network of cities dedicated to such an important topic, with almost 300 cities as signatories. Thank you once again for being here, and I hope you have a good experience in our cities. We see you in Rosario in 2023. Thank you.
Really no script to follow after both your moving and motivational speeches, except I think leaving here with hope, not in a naive way. Use hope to promote energetic change as you are doing. So thank you so much. You guys are off the hook. Please enjoy the rest of your stay here in Rio, and thank you so much.